Good evening or morning or whatever time of the day it happens to be. Welcome one, welcome all to the Writer's Block podcast. I'm your host, Greg Nykus. A lot of emphasis on my name today. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the literary adventures to come in this episode. This week, I'm sitting down with author Keala Kendall to talk about her new book. We'll talk about how a longing for her homeland is what initially inspired. We'll talk about how a longing for her homeland inspired the creation of this book, her experience working with Disney on their Twisted Tales imprint, digging into the myths and legends and history of Hawaii, and so much more. If you guys are enjoying the Writer's Block podcast, please consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow along with us over on social media. We are at Writer's Block Pod on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. And you can get involved with the show by sending us an email. We are writersblockpod@gmail.com. All right, housekeeping out of the way, let's get into today's conversation with Keala Kendall. You've spoken about how you have multiple writing projects that you've done over the course of years and years that are unpublished. As someone who has a habit of jumping from one idea to the next, I'm curious, do you see these older stories as stepping stones or writing exercises that helped you grow? Are there some that you still hope to eventually revisit and bring to the world?
I definitely want to bring them back to life. I always think no project is dead. It's my agent told me this. She thinks they're early. And I really agree with that sentiment. Sometimes it might just need another look. We always hear these stories of authors who are like, oh, I shelved it and then revisited it. And I love that. I've also cannibalized my ideas. Sometimes I'm like, oh, that idea I had for that story, it didn't really fit there, but I think it works here. I always think of writing like that ideating stage and researching as ingredient hunting, if that makes sense. Kind of
Yeah.
like you don't know what you're going to make until you look in your fridge and then you like, well, this is what I have. But the longer I have to percolate, like ideas to percolate, the better it turns out.
I love that philosophy of cannibalizing your ideas because I feel like that's where some of the best stories is like, okay, well, I like this over here. Let's put it over here like this. I like this. We'll just cherry pick these.
Hmm. And I think that's how you develop a body of work too, is like, oh, you do revisit themes. I didn't notice it until I was a couple projects deep, and I'm like, oh, that is a theme that I just can't leave alone, apparently.
You studied screenwriting before moving into novels. How much has that training influenced the way that you approach writing fiction now? And do these two forms of storytelling feel connected to you, or are they just completely different
Hmm.
writing muscles?
I definitely think so. I lean towards a more visual sensibility, I would say. I sometimes when I'm writing, there's a moment in That Which Feeds Us where I remember just staring at the ceiling thinking, man, I know exactly how I would film this and what camera directions I'd use, but it's hard to write this. So the scene I had in mind was, in the horror movie when the protagonist is being watched by someone, but
Uh,
they don't know. I'm like, how do you capture that in a novel? How do you show that? Because she can't be aware of it, but we're seeing everything through her viewpoint. I'm like, I just want to set that vibe up that there are eyes watching us. How do I do that? And I figured it out by having another character comment, like someone's watching us, like she notices it and kind of you don't see it though. You look back and they're gone, and it's like,
mm.
hmm. So, but I remember just feeling that chafing a little bit like, man, I wish I could just pull the camera out or put an illustration in, like this is how it would look in a storyboard. But I really enjoy it. It's funny though, for screenwriting, I tend to write more comedic. And then for a horror
A little
with my
spookier.
prose, yeah. But it's useful. It's so useful for writing for IP for Disney. I always think of writing IP novels as spec scripts. So spec scripts where you take I don't know how familiar your audience is, but you might take an established show and then do your own episode on it. And you would add this to your portfolio because most of the screenwriting jobs that are like you'll be in a writer's room and you're showing them you can adapt to the room's voice or to the show's voice and how you can write in that style. And I find that very useful for being a chameleon for IP because you have to adjust your voice. But I do feel like the girl in The Exorcist with my head kind of spinning like a lazy Susan sometimes when I'm between projects.
Yeah, just drastically different tones. Is that ever hard to
Mhm.
balance for you?
Yes, I did get That Which Feeds Us down, though, the voice for it, how to jump back into it, because I was working on Moana. It's funny, I actually wrote the first draft of That Which Feeds Us first before How Far I'll Go and Nobody Gets Left Behind released. However, because of the publishing timelines and how much faster IP is developed and published, I wrote Moana, published it, wrote Nobody Gets Left Behind, and that's the Lilo and Stitch one. And I would say I was kind of going for a Men in Black tone because there is that humorous tone. It's a very hard tone to get in writing. Published it, and then had That Which Feeds Us come out. Going back to That Which Feeds Us, I started going to TripAdvisor and reading one-star reviews about Hawaii and like how mean-spirited the locals are. And I was like, that's the voice. That's the voice for Lehua. Just to be clear, it's not mean. It's just that kind of she's the, petulant, like
Mhm.
19-year-old who's going home for the first time and she can't afford it, really. She's here because of a tragedy, like her sister is missing. And so I think it's okay to have that edge.
You have an incredibly atmospheric tone in not just this, but also in your Disney works as well.
Thank you.
I'm just really curious when dealing with like someone who deals with these heavier set pieces and these bigger moods and bigger expressions. What kind of stories did you gravitate towards growing up that shaped kind of your style and just the way that you write now?
I would read anything I could get my hands on. Once I had that gateway to reading opened, I remember I struggled to read at first, probably because of the ADHD I didn't know about at the time, but the focus staying in it. So I started reading a lot of manga and graphic novels, being in Hawaii, especially like being mixed race. My family we had Japanese media in the house. And so I remember reading those, and that kind of opened the door towards more stories. And then as I got better at reading, like got my foothold in, we'll say, I read everything I could get my hands on. And that included my aunt's collection of Jude Deveraux bodice rippers and Nora Roberts at the ripe age of 10. But I didn't know. And it was just like, anatomically, more curiously,
Yeah.
like, that's interesting. But the plot, a little thin. No, I actually liked a lot of the novels at the time because it felt very, we'll say anime-esque. You have like Knight in Shining Armor is Jude Deveraux's very famous work, and it's an isekai. If we're familiar, the nerds in the audience will know.
That's
But
most
yeah,
of us, so.
yeah. I'm like, it's an isekai. She goes back in time to the medieval era with the knight.
So your heritage is clearly something that you were deeply passionate and knowledgeable about. How much did that perspective play into your conversations with the Disney folks when it came to writing How Far I'll Go and Nobody Gets Left Behind for their Twisted Tales imprint?
It always felt like a conversation. I try to remember, so growing up in Hawaii and then moving to the continent, just a little TLDR background. I am very familiar with being maybe the first native Hawaiian people have ever met, and then them realizing, oh, that's a thing in conversation with me. And I can't take offense at it because you don't know what you don't know. And I understand it's so widespread that it's just systemic. It's not like an individual failure at this point. It's just like, oh, you haven't been taught that. So I always approach it as a conversation rather than this is I think there's so much of that because the world kind of feeds on that right now.
Mhm.
Like just that outrage. And it's so easy to get upset about things, but I'm like, gosh, I gotta save my energy. There's too much to be mad about. Someone just not knowing something and innocently not my top priority. So I like to approach it as a conversation. In the letter to the author, I'm going to reference That Which Feeds Us to answer this question. I am keeping it in mind,
Of
but
course.
it ends with ikomomai, which means welcome, and it's the same greeting we'd use to welcome you into our house. And I always think like, oh, I'm bringing you in and having a conversation. This might be the time where I challenge a lot of stereotypes you've been taught but don't know they're stereotypes and how maybe offensive they might be. So let's take it easy. So Lego is a great vehicle for that. For the conversations like Disney, they really wanted to prioritize authenticity. And also like I do understand their brand, and this is an established like IP, with Lilo and Stitch and Moana. So for me, my friend Mania has an essay. It's in Apex magazine. It's called Islanding or Riding. I might be slaughtering the title, but she talks about how we bring our culture to our writing and how to island it up. And that was my intent with it was like, how can I make the mono world feel bigger, even though this is like a sandbox I've been given? It's not like I can just say, and now we're gonna break down that wall and put in 5 more acres of sand, guys. Like, so it's always interesting and fun for the nobody gets left behind. There's just like, I think the restrictions sometimes lead to more creativity. And so it was fun to see what puzzle pieces fell in because nobody gets left behind. Mosquitoes are a big part of the Lilo and Stitch world. And so I thought it would be fun that one Nani and Stitch go to the Galactic Federation. And I thought, what if they don't know what mosquitoes are? What if when they arrive on the platform, these people think they're mosquitoes? and that they're endangered, but they're like, what's in danger? Are we in danger? Just a classic like cultural shock, miscommunication. Because I'm
Mm.
like, I've never met humans as far as I'm aware. And there's this thing in Samoan dancing called the mosquito slap dance. And I thought, what a cool thing to bring. Like this little puzzle piece just kept falling into place. Like, what if we show the aliens the mosquito slap dance? So there's this whole moment where I got to just kind of play with it. It's much more humorous, I should say. It's not in the US quite yet, but hopefully.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah.
So this book, That Which Feeds Us, is a project you've been working on for some time, and it's a very personal one. The original title, Soon Ripe, Soon Rotten, which it kind of instantly gives this more eerie impression of the story, like kind of
hmm
wearing it on its sleeve. What can you tell us about that original title and what inspired the change?
So I love the title still, and I'm always telling myself I'm going to use the old title somewhere because it comes from the persimmons. So persimmons are a central motif in the novel, and for persimmons, they when they look good to eat, they're not. They're going to be too astringent. They're going to not taste right, and they're going to be hard. You have to wait until they're so ripe they look rotten. And there's something about that that just feels like the perfect Gothic fruit. And also this painful ripening process of assimilation for Hawaii colonialism. And so that was where it came from. And there was this sort of image, it's a political caricature cartoon, not quite sure what the right word would be here, but um of Abe Lincoln, and he's sitting under a tree, and there's these fruits in the tree, and he has his hat, classic hat, almost like an Uncle Sam hat, open in his lap, and it says USA on the hat, on like the band. And falling into the tree is a fruit with the word Hawaii on it. And then in the tree is Cuba, the Philippines, maybe Haiti. I have to look at it again. But it was during this expansionist period. And so this idea of Hawaii as a ripe fantasy fruit that the US is just waiting to pluck was very common like a very common image in American minds.
Yeah.
And so that's what I wanted to explore. It just was all these like I didn't like when I found that I was like, oh my gosh, like it's all connecting. Feel a little bit like Charlie Day with his board, but more less caffeinated maybe. But
Yeah.
anyways, but with the title change, they wanted it to feel more connected to the Hawaiian setting, and so we used the translation, the literal translation of aina. So aina means food, but the literal translation is that which feeds. And so it's all about this sort of reciprocal relationship Native Hawaiians have with the land and like consuming it. And Malama Ka'aina is a central tenet of Hawaiian belief, which means to care for the land or to care for that which feeds you. And there's something haunting about it, especially the setting of this resort that's built on an old plantation, that's this luxury built on exploitation.
Gothic horror is such a traditionally like dark and moody genre, while Hawaii is often portrayed as this bright and beautiful and idyllic place.
Mm-hmm.
What made that genre the right vehicle for telling the story? And if you don't mind, what is the elevator pitch for this story to you?
An editor said this and it's lived rent free in my mind basically. And I'm just like, well, I'm going to use that. You did it better than I ever could. So That Which Feeds Us is a Hawaiian Gothic thriller. Imagine White Lotus written by Jordan Peele. And what they said, I was like, put that on my tombstone, please. Just blazing it there. I peaked, I'm dead, put me in the ground. But anyways, love his films. And so it's about a Hawaiian girl who goes to her homeland to find her missing twin who has disappeared at this wellness resort. Think White Lotus, but on a private island for the top 1%. It's very exclusive, 10 guests at most at a time. And she is looking for her sister, and she uncovers the dark side of paradise and these supernatural horrors beneath the surface of this hotel, basically, and the island's dark history. And she has to uncover it to find her sister. With Hawaii, I actually set out to write a story about my diaspora feelings living in the continent. I realized I was very homesick and I wanted to go home, even if it was only on the page. And so I was writing the story about a diaspora girl going home for the first time to find her twin. It was definitely more thriller. But as I started to think about what she would see and experience and how to make this story accessible to continental readers who might not be familiar with this vision of Hawaii, because the postcard image is the most popular visage of it, my homeland, I realized a ghost story is what I was telling because she's going home and finding it's not quite right. And homesickness is such a central tenet of the Gothic genre. And so I had her also Hawaii. I mentioned this in my author's note at the very beginning of the book. I think it's a perfect Gothic setting for the same reasons people escape there. It's seclusion and isolation. It's the most populous population center on earth, but isolated as well, like most isolated populous center. And so there's something about that contrast that drew me in that felt inherently haunting. And so I wanted to explore colonialism's ghosts because when you know the history of Hawaii, it's impossible to not see it etched into everything around you.
At the heart of the story is Luhia's search for her missing twin sister. What interested you most about exploring the dynamic between these two sisters?
I love this idea of not knowing our family really and having to kind of peel back their layers. And I think there's a connection there with going home too for the first time as an adult. I think we've all had this experience. I mean, unless you're incredibly lucky to have never left your childhood home or never moved away once in your life and you just have an attic full of memories and never had to pack that all up. Um, Lehua goes to this homeland that she has this connection to that through her grandparents, these stories they've told, and it's almost like they're waxing poetry because of nostalgia and they miss it. And so they almost are fantasy lands, the same vision that a tourist or a visitor might have of Hawaii before they go there. But I think there's something about homeland and your sister and like your family and connecting to these roots and that felt connected to me for Lehua's journey. And Ohia is largely absent from the book because she is missing. So I needed her to feel present on the page. And so Lehua's complex feelings towards Hawaii when she's there, she's not really wanting to be there. The last time she saw Ohia, they had kind of a big fight, but when she hears her sister's on academic suspension, used to be a perfect 4.0 student, and she's been kicked off the track team, and she's a girl with Olympic aspirations, one of the top 10 runners nationwide. She's like, what the hell? This is not like her. Something is suspicious. I need to go. And so she immediately hops on a plane. I think we all have that sibling or just family member where it's like, gosh, I hate you right now. I'm so mad at you, but yeah, I'd go to hell and back for you still. So she goes to find her and she doesn't want to be there, but she is hoping her sister wants to see her. And I think that matches Lehua's connection. Like, I don't know if I belong in this homeland. It feels alien and foreign to me because I've never been here, but I want to belong. I want to feel this mooring here. Like I belong because she's never had that. Both her and Ohio grew up in foster care after their grandparents died at the age of 12 when they were 12. And they've just moved through these homes. Their mom's absent. And so that's also the fear is Ohio will end up like her mom with no answers, no idea where she went.
While writing this book and kind of diving into the history of colonial Hawaii, did you come away with like a deeper understanding of your own past or relationships with your heritage, or maybe did you learn something that like fascinated you that you just didn't expect?
Yeah, I actually got more radicalized, which was funny to me. I didn't realize there were things that growing up with, I'm like, oh, I love this. This is such a neat part of my childhood. And then I found out, oh, that's because of colonialism, huh? That started because of tourism, huh? Like it all comes back to how does it serve tourism rather than this neat thing that's like benefiting Hawaiians or local people. Locals were people who might not be native Hawaiian but grew up there, Kamaaina, like
Mhm.
a child of the land. The example I like to share is Aloha Friday. It's this thing on Friday where you maybe show up in more casual dress, like the Aloha attire is what we call it, or Hawaiian dress shirts is how it's more colloquially known, I believe. That started though because when tourists would come and they'd see all the plantation workers, it was kind of uncomfortable. It was bringing the vibe down to see all these sweaty workers wearing their like stained clothing. And so they introduced Aloha Friday and encouraged the plantation workers on Friday to wear the Aloha shirt. So that when the tourists arrived, it's like, we're all partying, we're all having fun. Don't look at them. They're having a
Oh
great
boy.
time. And that's where I feel like this Aloha spirit idea kind of first starts, where it's like, oh, you're so welcomed, happy to serve you, and doing it with a smile. And I'm like, there's something kind of scary about that.
Yeah, wow. I had never really thought about this stuff because like for me, like the lenses I've always seen, like obviously being a mainlander, coming from America, like the
Hmm.
Midwest, it's things like Lilo and Stitch, things like Rocket
Hmm.
Power when I was growing up, like oh here
Hmm.
these very like seen through rose-colored glasses views. I'm curious. We've talked about it a couple like quite a bit, but the media is always portrayed pretty historically in this idyllic lens.
Hmm.
Is there any like a media thing that you've seen about Hawaii that you think actually genuinely captures the experience in a meaningful way?
There's books that I'm a big fan of. One of them is called This is Paradise. And and every drop is a man's nightmare. I have it on my shelf, but I don't want to get up and get it
Yeah,
and disconnect everything. But
understand.
that one's by Megan Kamale Kakimoto, and it's an anthology set. It is very lyrical, and it does take these ideas of local and Hawaiian ghost stories. She's Hawaiian Japanese, and so there is that. I think there's a little bit of that Ito element in there, Junji Ito, where it's very unsettling.
Mhm.
And I like rereading them. But those look at, they take the folklore for her stories and kind of peel it back. And there was actually a recent article, column from Makana Ayer. It's Eyre. I learned how to pronounce things all the time from my audiobooks. He just did one for Civil Beat where he was talking about maybe noir is the way to look at Hawaii for people homegrown here, basically. And he mentioned that, which feeds us, where it's like, it's interesting that we talk about the seediness and grit of the human condition, whereas like forgetting Sarah Marshall or 51st Dates, it's like this very melodrama,
Mhm.
beautiful backdrop. So when you say that, I'm like, I think I see it in books sometimes. And then there's a documentary called Cane Fire, and it looked at the sugar cane rebranding from the plantations to hotels. And it was so interesting to see that while I was working on this book. I'm like, I'm reminded of the meme about Trump's tax returns, not to get political, it's just a meme where it's like, man, I spent 2 years on this story and then he just tweeted about it. I'm like, man, I've been researching this for like a year and he just released a documentary about it.
Mhm.
So, but it was good.
So I guess winding down then, just a question I always wanna end things with. What is one question that you haven't been asked yet about this book that you really wish that someone would ask?
Ooh, it's not so much to really ask, but I think it's I always get asked the meaning of my name. And so I was very surprised when no one asked about Lehua no Hias, but it's
Okay.
not like a need. I also think it's a perfect API book month book, which it
Okay.
is API month. I am happy to talk about that because sugarcane plantations are central to the union development and labor history in America and Hawaii. Asian Americans got so many like civil rights through the union, like that really made them a political bloc. And this book has that. It talks about it. It talks about the history of the sugarcane plantations in a way I haven't seen before. That's why I wanted to write it. And then for Lehua no Hia's name, I'll do it really fast. It comes from a myth that's mentioned in the book about a girl named Lehua and a boy named Ohia. And Pele, who is a goddess of volcanoes, loves Ohia and lusts after him. But when he turns her down because he's with Lehua, she turns him into this gnarled Ohia tree. And Lehua cries. And some stories say Pele felt remorse and couldn't undo it. And some stories say the gods were going to help her, but couldn't undo or help her in any other way. They turn Lehua into a flower, and she is the flower upon which the Ohia tree is. And when you separate the two, it will rain because it's the gods crying for them being separated again. And I thought that was those are two great names for twins.
Yeah.
Like, and Ohia is also a type of sugarcane variation.
Okay.
I love those little like secret double meanings of names. So yeah, it just felt like it fell into place.
I love that. Keala, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast this
Yeah.
week. Where can our listeners go to find the book, to find more from you and all the cool things that you've got going on
So
right now?
we have two versions of the book, Target exclusive
Oh,
edition. And this one has like a gold foil and it has an extra myth at the back. And this one should be at any Target in the Sunny Reads and Reese Witherspoon collection area. And then this is the regular book, and you can get it wherever books are sold. I'm also on kealakendall.com and social media. If you go on Instagram, you'll probably see my dog, my writing assistant, who doesn't put enough hours, in my opinion, but it's okay. She doesn't know what capitalism is, and good for her.
oh, I feel that. I have a lazy retriever who's around here somewhere who
Mhm.
she just wants to barge in sometimes and just snore loudly while I'm recording. So I understand that.
Yep, exactly. You think of the Hayao Miyazaki myth. You have no schedule. But yeah, thanks for having me, Greg, and
Yeah,
so excited.
of course. Yeah, and thank you. And again, thank you for joining us. And this everyone should go out and check out the book.
Well, thank you.
Next week on the Writer's Blick podcast, I'm going to try really hard to not fanboy. I'm sitting down with Veronica Roth, the author of the Divergent series, to talk about her new dystopian fantasy novel, Seek the Traitor's Son.
Seek the Traitor's Son is set on a futuristic Earth where a virus called the fever has destroyed Earth's population. Basically, everyone who gets it dies, but half of them come back to life with special gifts, usually relating to the perception of the past. But some rare people can see the future instead. And our main character, Elegy, is summoned before them to hear a prophecy. And the prophecy says that she'll either save her people from their enemies or fail them. And along the way, she'll fall in love with a man who will bring her death.
If you're enjoying the Writer's Block podcast, please consider leaving us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow along with us on social media. We are at Writer's Block Pod on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook. And if you want to get involved with the show, you can send us an email. We are writersblockpod@gmail.com. Once again, thank you so much to Keala Kendall for joining us this week. Thank all of you for sticking around and listening. I hope it was as fun and as enlightening for you as it was for me. Until next time, I've been Greg, you've been awesome, and keep writing.